Okay, hello everybody. Thanks very much for joining this Talent Pipe webinar. We call it Talent Pipe. It's an abbreviation of talent pipelines because a lot of the things that we talk about on these webinars are to do with talent pipelines. And this is a pipe of useful content for you. So I'm Adam Gordon. I'm hosting today's session. I don't always host it. Sometimes Scott hosts it or Billy hosts it, but it's me today. So we've got several of the British nations represented here in Scotland and Wales. We could almost have a rugby match. I'm looking for...
We know we'll win.
Almost certainly, yes. Wales will definitely win. We're looking for anybody that wants to come and join us. We've got a bit of a structure around what we're going to be talking about on here. Anybody that wants to join us on screen, because you've got something specific to add to this subject, then just make your point in the side chat and say, let me come on screen and talk about it. I'm particularly looking for Welsh people, for Irish people and English people, and anybody else outside of the British Isles as well. So, yeah, Theo had a specific area of interest about this subject of data in recruitment. I posted a video on LinkedIn. I was talking at the In-House Recruitment Network's world-class marketing event. It was about how to apply world-class marketing to talent acquisition. And I was talking, a lot of the things I was talking about around marketing were to do with data and how you can make use of data at scale to create personalized journeys and things like that. And Theo commented that he liked the subject and had some really interesting things to add to it around data and how it can be used. Donya, just to let you know, you just click on the link after this session and you will get to the recording. So it is being recorded and the link will work for the future. So anybody that's got any other points that they want to make, just put it in the side chat ideally rather than clicking ask a question, because the side chat's where we're going to monitor anything that anybody wants to add to this. So Theo, please give us a quick introduction. What's your name? What's your background? What do you do? What's your CV? Tell us about your journey to what you're doing today.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Theo Smith. I head up recruitment at NICE, the National Institute of Health and Care Excellence. But my background is quite varied. I started out in a recruitment consultancy, 360 sales role. And then I went into executive search for 4 years. I went in-house then, and then I worked for UK at the time, more across a variety of areas, RPO, recruitment marketing, social, managing and setting a project. And now I find myself here at NICE, which is really an interesting opportunity to bring all of that experience together, because we provide evidence-based research into the health sector. And what I've been able to do now is take a kind of evidence-based recruitment approach. It's been good fun trying the two together.
Well, I hope you and I don't have groupthink here, because my background is actually very, very similar. Recruitment agency, recruitment marketing, exec search. So we've got a similar kind of history. Mine's just a lot longer than yours, unfortunately. Okay, let's start off by looking at data and the types of data that we actually can access in recruitment. So if we think about individual candidates, of course, we know their names, we know their employers, we know their job title, and we can get that from LinkedIn. Once they make contact with us, we've probably got their email address. We've probably got their mobile phone number. We've probably got a lot more information about their skills, the keywords, the experience. I've almost certainly got their address, their personal address. And then when we go into an interview with them, we can probably find out things like actually what's their husband or wife's name and what's their kids' names and ages and things like that. So there's a lot of personal information that we're able to get about individual candidates. Do you think that's a challenge, and is that a problem for recruiters that we have that information stored?
Well, it's certainly now a challenge with GDPR in consideration, and the fact that we need to be explicit. We always have to be, but now it's far more structured that we need to be explicit around exactly what we're going to be doing with that information. And then actually we need to be at varying points through the year, we need to be connecting with those individuals to ensure that they still understand what we're using it for, and that we continue to update them if we're going to do anything else with it. Now, I can't say that that is being adhered to and widely used everywhere, but certainly here at NICE, because we're an arm's length body of the Department of Health, we have to ensure that we're 10 steps ahead probably of most other organisations. So I think it probably is. It certainly is something I now give a lot more consideration than I used to. And even when I think around social media and how I engage and interact with people across social media, what the impact of that data is, and the way that we interact with them. And sometimes it's easier if you, and sometimes this is why it happens, if you separate yourself from that data, i.e. you're using a supplier to support you, but actually you're still accountable. And I think sometimes that's forgotten. So I don't know whether recruiters are thinking of it, but actually they should. And it's quite quickly you make a really, really big mistake in adding the way that you use that data.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that this could be considered almost as important as maybe like a telecoms provider's having your data, or even maybe a bank having your data. In the case of things like temp workers and people like that, then I guess you would also maybe have things like bank account details, for example. Yeah. So it's really, really personal information that we have access to storing here. Lauren's asked the question, why do you need a candidate's address before making an offer? I don't think you necessarily need a candidate's address, although the norm has been up until to date for people to put their address on their CV. Is that changed?
It depends how you segment it. So here at NICE, the hiring community, hiring managers don't see a lot of the data. They don't see the names, they don't see the addresses, they don't see a lot of that personal information. We're actually looking to strip more of it out so that you won't see where they went to university, just the qualification and the grade potentially. There's certain roles where it's more important that you have access to some of that information and then make a decision in isolation. But I agree, you don't actually need to see that information across the whole organisation. You just need to understand who needs that data and information, why do they need it, and what are they going to do with it. Are those people who own the data, the candidate, are they aware of what you're doing with it broadly?
Yeah, that's true. Transparency is really important, and it is vital that you let people know what you're doing with their data. Do you think in that case it would be prudent to take the minimum amount of information? Because if you don't need somebody's address, for example, then maybe it's better to specifically not request that information.
And that's a very good point. So it's for what purpose do you hold that data? Are you asking for a postcode so that you can better provide them with information that's relevant to them, and are they aware of that? You want to send them jobs that are within their locality?
Yeah.
Or are you taking it just because you access to that information? You want to do it at a single first point. You've got a big complex HR system. You want to pump that HR system full of as much information as possible up front. The reality is a lot of applicant tracking systems now allow you to segment that journey. And if you're offering the right candidate experience, you request the information, you require it, and you provide it to those people who need it. I'm not a GDPR expert, and I would take guidance from those experts within the organisation, like certainly when I need it, but that seems fairly simple and logical to me. Get the information you need at the point that you want it. I think the fear is you won't get it when you need it, and that will increase delays in the process. But us going, it's going to be an additional delay. Is that a reason to take all that information up front? I'm sure the candidate will go, actually, no, do I really want you to have my data? If you hit me out of the process really early on, I don't feel you've assessed me fairly, then I'm sure they'd say, actually, no, I don't.
Yeah, okay. One other thing that I want to mention about this is a lot of people think the information that the information that we get from candidates, I think some people feel like if they don't add that to their applicant tracking system, but maybe they put it on a spreadsheet or something like that instead, then that's more of a safeguard. But it's really not, because a spreadsheet is a database, and a list of names with information about them on your pad of paper is legally a database as well. So it's not just about the information you have on the applicant tracking systems. I think being explicit around what information you're requesting from candidates and what you don't want them to give you is quite important.
I'm conscious of tech. Is that audio better for people? If I take that off, is the sound better?
I'm conscious that a lot of people can't hear your sound all that great. I can hear you. Everybody's going to have. We've always got, when there's a lot of people joining the crowdcasts like this, there's always some people that are not able to hear great, or the video's pausing or something like that. But it's really up to your own individual local broadband and stuff.
Seems it's okay.
So
yeah,
it's the individuals. If they can't hear, unfortunately, it's the connection that they have rather than the connection you have. Your sound is okay. It's not spectacular, but it's good. It's good enough. And I can see that we're getting a mixed response in the side panel there. So some people are saying they can hear you fine.
Okay.
So let's talk about the different stages within recruitment where you're going to access information and why that's useful. So I'll start with the point that you don't know somebody. So you don't know somebody, you don't know anything about them, but they're coming and taking a look at your career site. What you do know about somebody, what you do know about that person is you actually have their IP address. If you're able to track who's coming to your career site based on their IP address. You don't know who the individual is, so it's not really personally identifiable information, but it is the start of being able to track people. And so a lot of people aren't really understanding that even if you go onto any website, depending on the kind of technology that they're using, they still will be able to determine that you've been there. So what you'll see is if you go onto, I did it yesterday, I went onto Ray-Ban's website, I customized a pair of sunglasses, I didn't buy them, but then today I've got adverts for those Ray-Bans coming onto both my phone and my laptop. And that's because there's technology that's looking at what's your location, what browser are you on, what's your Google profile, and various other things like that to be able to determine that that's the same person, even if you're going across devices. So even before the point that somebody has said they're interested in an opportunity or even uploaded their name and email address, your employers are able to track you. So that is data that people are able to access at that stage. Moving on to at the point that somebody fills in their email address, whether it's for a job, whether it's actually applying for a job, or they're just filling in a form to say they want updates, they want to join your talent network or whatever it is. At that point, you can get even more information about that person. So you're going to be able to do geo-targeting, and you're going to be able to understand where is that individual in the world. Not necessarily to their specific house, but to within a very short, small area, a postcode area, effectively. So that's the next point where you're getting information about them, and then moving further into the recruitment process with them. Of course, you just get more and more data. So a lot of people aren't really aware that there's information available to employers that determines that you are a specific individual even before they know what your name is or your email address is. Now, let's just move on to this concept around how data can be used to manipulate humans. And if you want to just give us a good outline of why you think this is an important issue, it's all coming from politics, really. but it could be used in other contexts. And then let's talk about how that can adapt to recruitment. And this is going to be the most fascinating bit of this discussion for me.
So for me, when I made that comment on your post, and I shared the post of you doing that presentation, it started to get me thinking around filter bubbles. And this was a big story in 2011. But it's become a big story again in 2016 because of what's happening globally in the political sphere. So, and the reason why you mentioned Cambridge Analytica, big part of what's happened specifically around 2016. So Cambridge Analytica, although they did something very questionable based on the volumes of data, ultimately what they did was quite useful. If you take away the fact they harvested raw data from 87 million Facebook profiles and the way that which they did it, access that information, actually via 10 likes they were able to better understand an individual than their colleague. 150 likes they were able to better understand individuals than their parents, and 350 likes and better able to understand an individual than their partner. So, I mean, this is incredible stuff, but basically it's based on the principle of these 5 characteristics, and you break down these 5 characteristics, which one are you are likely to understand what you're going to respond to, and then they present that information to those individuals based around the, politics, political decisions or viewpoint, whether it's, guns or whether it's, hunting or whatever it may be. The reality is, they were able to get the right information in front of the right people that would make them do something, whether that's share that post or whether that's to go and vote, which is really powerful stuff. And I've been thinking and reading a lot now around the filter bubble and around what Cambridge Analytica have done and around what's happening with Facebook and Google, and thinking, wow, this is incredible. And we need to do something to ensure that we don't just sit in this very niche, small filter bubble where we're only understanding a very small group of people. And that naturally can start to impact on recruitment and the way that we engage with candidates.
Let's just quickly dwell on this for a second before we go into filter bubbles in a bit more detail. Let's dwell on the fact that Facebook knows more about you than potentially even you know. Facebook, it's been shown, is able to predict that somebody is about to realize that they're pregnant before they realize themselves.
Yes.
Facebook is able to predict that somebody is about to come out as gay and tell their friends and family that they're gay. Facebook knows more about us as individuals, certainly, than other humans do, and in some cases more than we know about ourselves. Somebody like Cambridge Analytica, and it came out of Cambridge University, I think. The company came out as it was a spin out from Cambridge University, the commercial arm of this. But they had an ongoing test, an ongoing survey for about 5 years, asking people to fill it in. And there was millions of people that filled in this. And this is where they got a lot of their information. And this is where they got a lot of the basis for the core platform for Cambridge Analytica came out of this test. I took part in it, and it was a lot of questions. And yeah, I mean, it gave me some interesting insights on myself. But the ability to then go and take that and use it to influence large groups of people based on their psychographic profile and for politics, but also for consumerism. I think this is what we're talking about.
It is. And there's part of the big fear that got me worrying about this is I saw things happening within politics, and it was almost against what I was seeing on social media. So I thought there's a movement happening. Wow, everybody's talking about it. No, my little filter bubble, everybody was talking about it. And then what I saw within the polls, within political decisions and everything else that's happening. So that's making me think, oh, hang on a minute. I'm a worldly kind of guy. I want to have access to all different types of information. I don't want to just read the Telegraph, or I don't want to just, whatever it may be. I don't want to be in that filter bubble.
Yeah.
So I then started to question whether or not social media should be more. But actually, the more I've done research, I found that, at least on the face of it, they have been trying to do that. So Zuckerberg started design something called Gobo, or a collaboration with a tool called Gobo, that basically allowed people through that tool to widen their bubble so that they could get views and interest from other people. But it failed, because ultimately what Facebook identified was actually people didn't want to widen their bubble, because they started to interact with people they didn't agree with and didn't believe in. And actually, there's a lot of research that's been done in the US 15 years ago that looked at communities of people where they did the same thing. They opened up people within the community and said, "Did you know this person, liked guns, or etc., or this person was against guns?" Now, these are people you may have interacted with in the street, who you got along with, but the minute you start to find these other things out about them, you think you go back into your corner. I don't speak anymore. I don't like them. They have these particular interests I don't associate myself with, and that's what's happened with social media, and that's when Facebook, Twitter, Google are not doing anything about it, because they're servicing their users, and the users don't want to have access to all this information that questions their belief system. And when they have done, actually, it's had the opposite effect. It's actually made people more entrenched in their views, not less, because the opposing view sickens you so much that you go even further away from them rather than come closer.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so I mean, even before social media, though, I think the statistics were in the 1980s, sorry, less than 20% of people voted in the UK, voted for a different political party than that which their parents had voted for. Okay, so we're really, really not open to change.
Yeah.
And I can see that as a parent today. I can see I'm trying to parent my children in the way that I was parented, and I'm teaching them things that I think are right. But of course, I'm getting what I think is right from my parents. So you add that, you then add social media to this, and I can see how that then goes about actually dividing people further.
It does, but so you're right. You've described the perfect filter bubble, the filter bubble of your family, of your close environment, of your blood, and then you could look at the filter bubble of your religious beliefs, or where you've come from, whatever it may be. It exists in such a variety of ways. But actually, they've also done some further studies and research that shows the things that can break down these bubbles, or these challenges around agreeing or disagreeing with other people, is when you have a common interest. So there's two areas I describe here. Sport is a big one.
Yeah.
If you've got a group of people who support Liverpool Football Club or any other football team or world team, now what happens is their political beliefs, you'll then give them because they support the team you support.
Yeah.
But actually, and I've experienced this within recruitment-related groups, being a part of a recruitment group where we talk around things happening in the industry. There's certain things we may massively disagree on, but actually, because you're part of that network and group, you're much more willing to listen, to understand, and to step back and take time to hear that other person's point of view.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I'm interested in seeing what we can do to create those environments, where those safe speaking environments, where we talk to somebody as a friend rather than as a potential enemy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's put this into a slightly different context. Something that's occurred to me recently is a lot of my friends in the USA, they get their news from British media outlets, like BBC, for example, because they absolutely appreciate the really, really strict kind of walls of the filter bubble that they're in, because Fox News gives you a certain type of information, and the biases that you see in American media are really quite concerning. And I hadn't actually appreciated that. I'm 42 years old, and it's taken till this year for me to really appreciate the difference in the way that media influences people in the USA compared to here in the UK, for example. And I don't think I'm naive about this, but as I say, I've got quite a few American friends who I just realized are getting their source of global news from BBC rather than from American media outlets. That's another really, really important for the entire world. That's a really important filter bubble.
It is, and then you look at the backgrounds of those people who were at the BBC who were presenting that news and information, where they went to school, the communities they live in. Naturally, they're going to be biased, and we can bring this all back to bias and how it impacts our world, recruitment world, politically, and that's why this isn't just me going, oh, isn't this nice to think about with recruitment? Another aspect of our lives. I'm sat at home, I'm on social media, I'm thinking, what is going on here, and how can I better inform myself so that when I'm sat there trying to engage and connect with candidates and drive them through a recruitment process, how can I make sure that we're doing it in the right way, and that we're not missing out on people? But also, as an organisation, we're a small organisation, big organisation that actually command the space on social media, because write a blog, it's not going to come anywhere on Google, right? Because only about 3% of all blogs get any kind of social sharing or backlinks or whatever it may be. I pulled that figure, but it's small, 6%,
yeah, sure,
3%, whatever it is. How can I ensure that small organisations and within digital transformation, we are seen, and we don't sit in the worst filter bubble of all, the filter bubble of complete non-existence. That nobody cares about whatever engages in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so let's take this further into recruitment. So here's one of the things that I think you found interesting. The way that I work, the way that my business works is our technology is able to understand that somebody likes their content through email or text message or social media. It understands how they want to receive communication. We're able to determine that somebody likes content in a video format or an infographic format or a white paper format. So we know the kind of the way that they want their information packaged. We also know what days of the week they want it on, what times of the day they want it on, and what types of subjects they're interested in. And of course, what we're doing is we're encouraging employers to make use of this data to get a really personalized experience to each individual, which of course is it's a filter bubble to the power of one. Because the person's been interested in this kind of stuff before, they're likely to be interested in similar type of content. Now, I think that's to the benefit of the candidate, but of course, the candidates are potentially missing out on information because they've never shown any interest in something before. It means that all they're getting is more of the same.
Yes.
So this is where I think you've got a query about the validity of this way of doing things.
Absolutely. So there's two sides. There's you liking stuff you like, and there's liking stuff you hate. It's two areas where it can be a problem. You think they like this organization and you think they want to engage with them, but actually they hate the organization because they've got a really poor service from them. So there's a danger that you could be sharing lots more information with them that makes them even more angry. And unless you've resolved that by solving the initial problem, which is you provided them with broadband and actually an awful service, they're never going to work with you. There's just one example of where it could be an issue. Yeah. The other example is diversity. And this comes back to the Amazon effect. The reality is if this organization has never had a particular type of person, whether they're neurodivergent, whether they are LGBT, or whether they're from a different ethnic background to those people within the organization, but you could filter them out because all the information is perhaps telling you that they're not the right person. And there's the risk. And it's not, I don't think this is something that we should be frightened of. It's something we should try and resolve. And technology ultimately, it looks like will be the answer, which is incredible. And what you're currently doing solves so many problems. But if we look at where I'm from, within my organisation, we're not at a stage we don't have the communities or the volume of recruiting whereby technology, I don't believe, can solve it for us yet.
Yeah.
And that it would be, and it is cost prohibitive at the moment. So I'm thinking, how do we potentially solve that? And in the future, it might be just as an example through Candidate ID or another piece of technology or whatever else it may be. But the types of things that go on in my head is, should I be creating more than one job ad? Just as an example. Should I have 7 job ads? You've described it as the right content, the right individual. But we're now talking about accessibility as well. There's new legal requirements that information content is accessible. So when we talk about accessibility, and we, again, in my neurodiversity, somebody who finds it difficult to hear, light sensitive, what they're reading, so that's just one element. Then we're talking about accessibility in terms of physical accessibility, whether or not they can type or anything like that. So how we ensure they can not just access it in the way that they want, but actually in the way that is best going to support their needs, and actually not inhibit them, because you may think they like video content, but actually it's the sound that's rather than the video, whatever it may be. These things we need to really understand. And I think what I'm trying to figure out now is, how can I do this? Always how to do it in a small, controlled way that is not yet technology, but ultimately it will be at some point, if you see what I mean. And that comes back to the, do I need 7 job ads with video, with sound? What can I afford? What's within my budget, and what's going to be acceptable?
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of different things to cover on that. There's 5 or 6 different threads from what you've just said.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at a couple of the comments here. So Martin Pools made an interesting comment. He said, I completely agree. I put in a complaint to a well-known retailer saying I would never use them again, and then they decided to put me on their mailing list. Feel free to name and shame them, Martin. Yeah. We're among friends here. Be interesting to know. That whole thing about, if you watch things that you don't like, but then you keep getting more of the same. I keep getting invitations on Facebook to join like English Defence League and friends of Tommy Robinson and things like that, simply because I'm looking at what the hell they're doing. I don't agree with anything that they're doing, but I'm looking at what they're doing just to keep abreast of what's going on in the world. And Facebook, of course, thinks I like it. On the other side, I get on YouTube all of my Screwfix. I'm not going to mention that name again on this because I like that company. I shouldn't have asked.
Hey, that's your filter bubble.
Yeah,
do you love them? Do you like them? You need to, experience what other people's views are. Ask them the question.
Yeah, I need to publicly say I like Screwfix. But the on Screwfix, yes, of course. But on YouTube, it gets it really right, though. On YouTube, it gets it really right. It's just wall-to-wall boxing content, and that's what I like. Now, Dave has got another one. So backing up what you said. So Dave Vinton said, when you were talking about the issue around diversity here, Dave says if we rely on data, we can end up being less diverse. And yeah, there's definitely a danger around that. So if you use data badly, you definitely do a kind of sweep all, end up with a lot of people missed. If you use data in more of a segmented way, you can actually appeal to more diverse groups, but there's a big difference between doing it badly and doing it well. So yeah, just on that aspect around diversity. In fact, accessibility. Let's talk about accessibility first. So, there's a clear issue around not everybody's got access to mobile phones. Not everybody's got access to the internet. Not everybody knows what LinkedIn is. So there's a whole load of different issues around relying on technology. There's a lot of issues around relying on technology for your recruitment, because if you purely have a technology-led approach, then you are definitely going to be missing out on people, and that's a problem for sure. Lawrence said, what are your thoughts on anonymizing candidate data?
Well, we briefly discussed that earlier, which is I think it's important to anonymize candidate data, if only so that the right people have access to it at the right point. There's some arguments saying, anonymizing data around name or something doesn't actually end up making a difference in terms of the hiring at the end. But actually, let's just strip all that away and let's just say what's the right thing to do. The right thing is that people that need the information have it at the point at which they really do require it, that they can make the right decisions that positively affect the individual. And I think for me, that's it. If we can anonymize it and it makes sense, then we should do it.
Well, yeah, there's a big. My friend in the Netherlands, Bas van der Hatter, did a study last year where he had people in his team applying for lots of different jobs with a Western name and with a Muslim name, and the person with exactly the same CV and skills, etc., and the person with the Western name got brought forward for 4 times more interviews. So there's a lot of big questions around data and eliminating bias, and of course, my other friends in Sweden who are the parents of Tengai. My unbiased recruitment interview assessment robot are really, really big on this area as well. So anonymizing data and trying to eliminate bias in recruitment is something that we all need to be contributing to as much as possible.
And can I just say that the technology providers now are making a shift. I spent a lot of time and energy and effort speaking to a lot of applicant tracking system providers. Some almost laughed at me in the sense of, why do you even want it? What a waste of time. And others clearly had put a lot of mechanisms in place. Now, I'm not saying it's the ATS provider was laughing at me, but the salesperson who I was speaking to, clearly that had an impact on the providers that I moved forwards with and continue to talk with. But it's just, I guess it's the type of customers that they're supplying. It's important to some organizations. To others, it's not even on their radar yet. For a variety of reasons, and that's another problem that we need to deal with.
What are the? Sorry, I'm not understanding. What were the people from the applicant tracking systems who laughed at you for suggesting about this? What was their actual challenge with it? Why did they think it was a waste of time?
So there was quite a few. I found it really, really challenging call actually. I was on the call for a couple of hours. I won't name the provider. It was an individual. Yeah. I can't say that. The organisation. A lot of people say positive things about it. So but ultimately, this was a really important element to me. And the individual was explaining how their system could do it. And I didn't think that was it basically was it was a plastic solution. And I was saying, I don't want that as a solution. And they were basically questioning why I needed to bother with it. They were just saying that effectively you want to streamline the process as much as possible, and you want to simplify it, and you want to allow people to make decisions as quickly as possible. So there was that, but it was also being able to score candidates as well. So it was the combination of these, anonymizing some of the data, putting a scoring mechanism that wasn't just like or dislike, and some of those things I was interested in. But some providers could give me a 30-minute commentary on what they've got in place, how they're developing it, how they're proving it, what else they'd like to do with it. And this organisation they weren't interested. Now, I think a lot of the customers are more commercially focused organisations, maybe fast-paced, fast growth, and maybe this just isn't an area that's of interest to them at this time. I don't know, but this particular individual did not get it, and there were others who just didn't see it as important.
Yeah, that's very strange, actually. Okay, I mean, I can see why running a technology business, I can see why somebody would say we recognize the importance of this, but unfortunately we can't get to it for another year
Yeah.
or something like that. I can understand that, but just dismissing it as a non-issue isn't something that I agree with. Dave's made another really interesting comment here, which is the biggest issues around candidate data I've seen is not the ATS, it's people exporting it to Excel and or emailing sensitive data and it remaining in an email archive. The biggest GDPR issue is human behavior and not technology. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of technologies that just don't support GDPR compliance. So I think there are technology problems, but at the same time, human behavior, yes, human behavior is an issue. I would say that can be neutralized by process. So it's got to be about process. Process and technology are the two things that fix GDPR and that make GDPR work for you, because something else to really bear in mind, and this is really, really important. Think about the candidate data you have. From my perspective, think about the candidate data you have, not just here are people who have applied for jobs and we might want to match them to future jobs. Actually, more so, here are people who would benefit greatly in their careers from receiving information that will be useful and relevant to them. So instead of actually trying to get people to sign up to apply for a job, get them to sign up for your content, effectively a newsletter. Get them to sign up for a newsletter that's aimed at helping them with their careers. That's just a slight mind shift in the way that I believe we should be thinking about the data we have in our ATSs and CRMs.
So just on that, I think Dave made a point there around people using spreadsheets. And I think this is a big issue with the big complex HR systems that are still in place in a lot of organizations. And that's why there's been a big shift to organizations taking on CRM systems or other solutions, other technology providers that can support them because of this big problem, especially when organizations are setting up new recruitment functions. And those recruiters who are coming into this organization that historically hasn't done recruitment or are setting up new functions, whether it's headhunting functions or whatever else, they just look at the system and go, this isn't going to work for me. I've got to find another way. Otherwise, I'm not going to be here in 6 months because it's going to be too difficult for me to do what I'm used to doing. So I think sometimes organizations have got to be accountable as well for understanding the people they're bringing into the organization and how they can facilitate and support them doing the job that they've been brought in to do, so that they don't have to find ways around the systems processes that are currently in place.
Yep, absolutely. Understood that. We've got a few more questions. Let's just go on to these. So Kaoe Jin has said, I'm doing a project about network data in recruitment. I've got a question. What kind of information are they interested in from a candidate's social network, like LinkedIn networks with profiles? I mean, so the answer to that is that recruiters are interested in every single piece of information that's on the internet about their candidates. So I've got to be honest. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. A lot of recruiters will be. So if you talk to like world-class sourcers in the world-class sourcing community, then nothing's off limits. Somebody's LinkedIn profile is important, their Facebook profile is important, their Twitter account is important. Their Match.com profile might get some review. So I think from a candidate's perspective, it's really, really important to know that everything you have online could be reviewed. And what you think is private very possibly isn't private. As an example of that, you can find more LinkedIn profiles from Google than you can within LinkedIn. It's just a really, really simple piece of information that allows you to understand that. If somebody's using a Chrome extension, like a Connectifier or something like that, then they're going to find probably a lot of the social networks that you have and a lot of other places you are online using partially your name, but your email address as a unique identifier. So there's a lot of different websites that you might have signed up for in the past and you might have put some information on and that people are going to be using to access information. Yes, a lot of recruiters think that that's maybe not that ethical, but most don't care. If it's there on the internet, it's public information to be used to assess you. I'm absolutely sure that Theo's got an opinion on that subject. Interested to know what you think.
Well, at the end of the day, I think we all got an individual responsibility for what we obtain and how we obtain it. And we've got to be able to look at ourselves in the mirror. And at the end of the day, we are accountable as individuals for what we do. And we do, especially now, the direction that the world's going in, we have to be ready that if somebody should come and audit what we're doing, how we're doing it, that we're able to answer why we followed that process. And pretending like, or saying that you were unaware or that you didn't understand, I don't think it's good enough these days. We've all got to look to understand the impact that we make as individuals within this process. So all the time I'm questioning what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, if it's okay. And sometimes, well, often I'm going, actually, that thing I did last week, I don't know whether that was right, because I've just spoken to this person over here and they've just completely enlightened me. I need to stop doing that. So I don't think it's a case of we're all going to be perfect overnight. We all understand GDPR, we all understand what we do with data, but we do need to be open to thinking about it and ultimately shifting out the way that we do this. Ultimately, we're in a digital world that means we are now going to have to evolve and change at a rapid pace, all of us, every single one of us. And you can see this happening, evolving now in the political sphere, in our work environment, in the laws, regulations that we put in place. But they're not going to solve it immediately as individuals who are going to make the biggest impact, I think, and by shifting their thinking.
That's absolutely correct. Let's move on to a couple of the other questions. So David Watts has said, regards bias, things like race, class, sexism, is there a risk of perpetuating this through big data, modeling and targeting the typical demographics for an opportunity rather than recruiting a more diverse audience? Well, I mean, immediately this is like so clear and has been for a long, long time. Here's an example of the clarity. I'm an investment bank based in London, recruiting for risk managers, and the first thing I need as the criteria is it's got to be people who have come from a Russell Group university, right? Or even worse, it's got to be people from Oxford or Cambridge. That's immediately going to make it much more likely it's somebody white, somebody from a middle class background, and so. Yeah, there's a lot of problems with that, and we've been doing it for a long time, of course. So is it perpetuating it through big data? There's a big risk it is. Example, I can now export a list from LinkedIn using Duck Soup or something else. I can export a list from LinkedIn in minutes of all of the people that went to Russell Group universities and are working as risk managers in the City of London. So it's so easy for me to be as biased as I want to be. And I don't even know I'm doing it. So the answer is, I believe, absolutely yes. Theo, anything else to add to that?
Yeah, just absolutely agree. And this is the whole issue around, filter bubbles and around what's happening in our world currently. And that's why we're having this conversation today, because the fear is that we just keep walking on and not doing anything about it, and not thinking, okay, how can we change the way we share information and we connect with the communities we're trying to attract?
I mean, let's talk about the upside of this, however. So, I mean, again, we've talked quite a lot about Facebook because obviously it's in the news a lot about this subject. If I go onto Facebook today, I do, of course, apart from the Tommy Robinson and English Defence League and things like that, I do get a lot of content that is absolutely relevant for me. And YouTube's just a great example of content that's absolutely relevant for me. And I want to know. So these content platforms actually know that I haven't seen something and they make sure that I see it. And that is a really good experience. That enriches my experience of the internet. So, there are some upsides. 5 years ago, Facebook would be giving me the same adverts as it would be giving my wife. And we don't like anything of the same sort of stuff. So today, however, we would get an entirely different experience. and I guess from an entertainment perspective, if we don't look too deeply at it, that is positive.
Oh yeah, and it's the same with video content, isn't it? You mentioned YouTube, but if we look at Netflix and Amazon Prime and all those other things that they provide for the type of content you're going to want to see, and so that you don't have to search through reading to content to find that thing you're going to enjoy. However, it does mean the most popular pieces of content and information are going to come up, and the challenge there is ensuring, coming back to the point around small producer of films, how do they ensure that their art house piece gets in front of you? You would absolutely love, that would transform your mind, the types of piece that you walk out and makes you do something, because most of it, let's be honest, you enjoy. It makes you feel nice. It's a warm cup of chocolate milk or whatever. I don't know. It's but it's not going to transform your life. It's not going to make you do something. It's just going to, I don't know. And I think that the whole thing around content is going down that route. We see more, jobs from Microsoft, but we're seeing less jobs from a small startup that's around the corner from it. It's incredible stuff, and we would love to work in that place, but we're not seeing the content. We're not seeing their jobs, and we're not really hearing what they've got to say. So, do they have to work harder to engage and connect with us? Yes. Is it going to cost them money and time and effort and energy? Yes. Or if they don't know how to do that, they just disappear. And for me, that's the kind of bit that we need to fix. How do we ensure that we connect the two, the person who wants the innovative startup company and the startup company?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and just as another example of that, so it is possible for at Canary Wharf, it is possible for Barclays or HSBC to send targeted adverts to every machine in the WeWork hub at Canary Wharf. So all these startups that are trying to build their fintech businesses could be getting adverts for job opportunities with HSBC and Barclays. You can target by building, you can target by office, and of course, big companies have got the opportunity to really lead and dominate in this kind of area. So it's definitely more of a challenge for smaller employers, as bigger ones can end up dominating. One thing that I wondered whether it might be useful is, if on content platforms we were given the opportunity to switch off recommendations, that might be quite useful. So we had the opportunity to actually effectively switch off the algorithm, and there's more of a random discovery engine, something like that. That's something that might actually give us a better experience.
But so this comes back to Jobo, the Zuckerberg created. In the end, Zuckerberg came around when the community are not interested in it. They don't want to hear from anyone else. So we need to have some government initiative that people pay into, like a platform consciousness that people want to get involved in, to explore and to diversify their thinking. But the problem is, if we're just thinking about the US on that basis, they don't even want to pay into a health. They want to pay into a health system whereby you've got a type of NHS. Political opinions aside, if they don't want to ensure that everybody's health is looked after, why are they going to pay into a system? Why are people going to pay into a social media system whereby you can change people's beliefs? And it's just not going to happen. So, Zuckerberg being clever here is going, hey, it's not my fault. It's my fault people just want to see what they want to see and hear what they want to hear and live in their filter bubble. Like, don't pick some social thing that they have to pay into. It's not going to happen. So, but can we achieve this in a small way? Maybe. Google going to do it? I don't know. Are we going to get maybe plug-in systems like Bobo or that we can tap in? But again, are we going to have the social bubble? Are we going to have those people, maybe like you and I, that go, hey, I want to increase my understanding of other people's views and I want to challenge myself and be put out of my comfort zone? But do we end up being like the 10%? Those people who just live in their small little island where they think everybody wants to be enlightened and talk about things like this, consciousness. Maybe not.
No, I think I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. I think that the people that want that are probably in the minority. I'm going to make one final point. So Brandon, it's from Brandon, Brandon Bissell has said on the discussion regarding data lessening diversity, it resonates with all marketing talks in all sectors, and not just about recruitment. So what alternatives to targeting a niche are there? As soon as the target audience becomes broader, it seems to lose effectiveness. Absolutely 100%. And this is where there's the balance. There has to be the balance between getting your job done and achieving your objectives versus attempting to encourage the broadest candidate set coming to your organization. So I think that is something that is an ongoing issue, and we're not going to solve it today. But Theo, I want to just thank you very much for coming and joining me on this session.
It's
been great to hear your perspectives. I've learned things from you. You have amplified a couple of issues for me as well. So it's been really, really great. And I'm glad that you commented on that post of mine a few weeks back and agreed to come on and talk about this in more detail. So thank you very much, everybody who's signed in to listen into the show. And I hope that's been equally useful for you. And until next time, have a good life and enjoy all of your personally streamed content experiences. Do what you can to learn about things that are not being sent right into your mind.
Get out that bubble.
Get out that bubble. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.
Cheers. Thank you.